The old carburetor. We'll start off by removing the 4 bolts that are holding the engine inspection bay here. These are 12 millimeter. Next, once you're into the carburetor here, loosen the throttle adjustment nut to remove the throttle cable. It is a 10 millimeter. Pull the throttle cable off the carburetor and manually work the cam to slide out the throttle cable. Your carburetor most likely will be different. I've capped off most of my vacuum ports just because I've been having so many issues with them running lean. So you'll have to manually remove your vacuum tubes just by pulling them off. Next, you can remove this back vacuum tube off the actuator, and you may need to kind of just pull a couple of these connections apart to get them out of the way here. There's one more here you can pull off and another T connection there, and this will give you just a little more room to work getting the carburetor off. We'll need to remove this screw right here to take off the intake boot, and we can go ahead and disconnect. It's right there, and the other clamp is right down here. Now there's 6 hoses total we need to remove from the carburetor. There's 2 coolant lines, 1 and 2, and those go to the choke. We have our 2 fuel lines on this side. It's kind of difficult to see. One's down there and one fuel line in is right there. And then there's also 2 on the very bottom of the carburetor that we can remove once we remove it from the engine. And I believe those are also 2 coolant lines for a preheater. Just squeeze these hose clamps and they'll slide right off. So I was saying, once you remove this lower one, you want to tuck it away just on a higher spot to keep all the coolant from draining out. So now at this point, I've just removed the 2 coolant lines from the side. I still have these 2 fuel lines to disconnect and the 2 underneath of it, but it makes it a little bit easier to remove the carburetor from the engine. It gives you a little more space to work. You can twist the carburetor around and it makes it a lot easier to remove those lines. So to do this, there's 2 bolts that hold the carburetor through. They go all the way through the carburetor to the block here and here. And you can see one's located right there. The other one is located just ahead of my finger there. Luckily, they're also your 12 millimeter. So we're gonna go ahead and pull those off and the carburetor will be ready to remove. Filming. As you can see, they're rather long. We will not need these for the new carburetor installation with the hardware included. I just removed the second bolt and you can see the carburetor is already separating from the intake manifold. There's this spacer in here. We'll go ahead and pull that apart and set it aside just in case we'll need it. You can see we got the 2 gaskets are on there. And here's the carburetor. These are the 2 fuel coolant lines beneath that you need to get off, and then the 2 fuel lines on the side that still need to be removed. Now the old carburetor had this spacer between the intake manifold and the carburetor. Just looking at the spacing, it doesn't look like we're going to be needing that with the new carburetor. We have a nice polished machined adapter. It does only go on there one way. It's pretty obvious if you do have it on backwards. So make sure you do have that lined up. And it looks like I have a pretty good fitment between the 2. Unfortunately, I don't have another gasket and those aren't coming off. So I'm gonna be applying a very thin layer of black RTV oil resistant sealant to the surface, and we will bolt that on there. Will you? A proper way of installing this now, you have a nice round part on top. You want the square part to the bottom. This is a 5mm Allen key. Try to tighten it somewhat evenly. Now there's a few things that the kit did not include. I had to just go pick up from the hardware store, and that's going to be two 5/16 splices, and these we're going to loop the two coolant loops that would go through the carburetor together, because we won't be needing them with this carburetor. I have a 1/2" hose clamp and I believe this is an 1/8" threaded pipe plug. The pipe plug technically isn't the right part for the job. If you have a barbed plug, that would work better. Most hardware stores don't carry these, unfortunately. So we're going to just be threading the pipe plug into the fuel return line and putting this clamp on there. It's not a pressurized fitting, so it should work fine. It should just be there to plug up the hose and keep any bugs from getting in there. I'm going to go ahead and thread in this plug in the fuel return line right here and squeeze. Next, we're going to go ahead and loop our two coolant lines together. We have these two coming out of there, and then our other two that we tucked away, which are right there. And we're just going to go ahead and connect them together with the hose splice. As you can see, I have this one just looped together. If you have a plug, you could go ahead and put it in right there. I don't. I couldn't find one at the hardware store, so that's going to have to do. And then our other one is just looped together, and that is the one right off of this coolant line. Goes around here. Now that we're about ready to put the carburetor on, make sure that this intake boot is pressed on there and that ridge is fully sealed up against the carburetor. It should be all the way to the carburetor. Next, you can go ahead and snug up the hose clamp, the first one at least. Don't go crazy and strip them out. I guess these are kind of harder to get locally, the instructions said. So just get it snug on there. I like to put the screws at the top so you can still access them once the carb's installed. Go ahead. I just got the carburetor bolted on the boot here. I had to kind of move the vent, the breather vent, around to the other side here. I'm noticing the fuel line kind of comes up from this way. I'm going to go ahead and reroute it. You can just simply pull it out and we'll reroute it over top of the carburetor, making sure that we're not getting it in the belt or anything like that. All these vacuum lines you can go ahead and remove. We're only going to need one, and that's going to go to the vacuum advanced on the distributor. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull these out of the way, and I'll show you the one that you need to keep, and that will just hook right from the intake manifold right there. Now we have the throttle cable. It just held in from a clip directly under here. You want to remove that. This carburetor, the throttle cable hooks up on the right side versus the traditional hookup on the left side. So we'll be modifying the throttle cable to hook up in here. Now the issue of not modifying the throttle cable is, even though it fits in the notch for the throttle down here, the cable's still too long. So to get past this, we're going to cut the cable and then install this new notch, and then we can adjust where the throttle cable attaches, and we'll still have the tightener here. So the plan is we're going to be cutting the original throttle notch off, and the kit came with this real small one. It has an adjustment screw in there, and then we can adjust where on the throttle cable we have it mounted. Now that we've cut off the end, we can slide the new end over. It has that little set screw in the end, which is a 1.5mm Allen wrench. So we'll go ahead and loosen this up, and this will take a little trial error exactly where to get it. And so once you get that notch on where you'd like it, now you need to cut off the end so it will fit in the guide. The two nuts are going to engage. One slips into the track and the other will sit on the top to tighten. And the actual nub, you'll have to work the throttle and you'll be able to slide it in there and adjust it. Now, once you get the cable installed, you want to make sure that it goes all the way to the stop and there's just a hair of slack. And then when someone pushes the gas pedal, it goes all the way up and you can't push it up any past the stop there. Once we do the original routing of the throttle cable comes from underneath here, around this corner into there. You'll want to remove it from the clips and reroute it around this way. You can zip tie it down there if you'd like, and then to here to have a more direct approach. So the next step is reinstalling the carb intake boot. This carburetor protrudes a little further aft, so we're gonna have to trim part of this boot off. I'm gonna go ahead and try just to this first line here and see what happens. It's gonna take some trial and error to see how much it takes. All right, I got the intake boot fitted up there. I still need to put the hose clamps on. I ended up trimming about 1 bandwidth of the hose clamp, just a little over off of there, and it fits pretty nicely now. Now, most of all these vacuum lines can just go ahead and be removed. If you are gonna remove them from the intake manifold, make sure to go ahead and cap them off here so you don't have any air leaks. The only one that we need to keep is the vacuum advance, and that's gonna be coming from the distributor here. Should be 1 vacuum line coming off there. Looks like this guy right there. Go ahead and follow that up, and we'll go ahead and hook that to the intake manifold. Well, that's it, guys. We got it all back together. The boot's on. Just kind of test running it. I found that the enrichment solenoid here, it had been assembled and slightly crooked in there. So I was getting an intake leak there, and I think fuel was leaking into the intake through that. So I just took it out and re-put it in square and tightened it up, and it's good now. We'll have to see how the adjustments go. The fuel enrichment screw for idle, it's kind of hard to see. It's easier to see once you have it off. Is right around here on the bottom, right there. And I'm able to just take a small bit and you can kind of tweak it. I have it actually closed off all the way right now. We'll see if it needs any adjustments later or rejetting. The actual idle adjustment is this black dial here. You can twist that and adjust how necessary. I have pretty much all the vacuum lines removed. While you have it apart, you might as well clean your PCV valve with a little carb cleaner. Take it out, shake it around, put it back together. But thanks for watching. If this video helped, make sure to subscribe down below. I'll be posting some videos about the new performance and seeing how it does.